Okay, so this is about aging of farmers, but this is really about the study of figuring out whether the public would support beginning farmers, right? Because of the aging of farmers issue. So this is a slide showing that the world's farming population is growing older, as I mentioned. In many countries, it's an issue in Asia in terms of the rural communities that are rapidly shrinking, feminizing, and aging, it says here. Okay. Japan, notoriously aging is one of their biggest social issues, right? In Japan and Korea and other countries. So Japan's farming population is rapidly aging and decreasing as well. In fact, Tokyo wants the Japanese government now recruiting experienced farmers, right, to come to Japan because of this issue. Now, Japan is an interesting case because a lot of the Japanese farms are small-scale farms. Right? This issue is probably not going to be as much of a problem for large and corporate farms, obviously, but for small in countries where there are significant number of small farms, it can be an issue, including succession, right, issue. Australia, apparently there's also aging of farmers in Australia. This coincides obviously with the aging in the whole population in Australia. So whether that's a problem or not at the moment, that's not for me to say. Although, as I mentioned earlier, I think I read an article that said that compared to the age of the average CEO in different industries across Australia, the average age of farmers, principal farmers, is still lower. That doesn't mean it's not an issue, right? It's aging. Obviously, in Europe, it's the same way with the demographics of the population in Europe. It's one of the greatest challenges, I think, that agriculture and rural areas are facing across Europe. And by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. Right? Let's make this informal. So also those in Zoom, can you check? Feel free to ask questions as we go along, okay? So another issue is this startup cost, right? For beginning farmers. Combination of expensive, mechanized, high-tech equipment and the cost of land now, especially after COVID, has really driven the initial startup costs for new farmers, around the world. I don't know about in Australia, but in the US, farmland prices have gone up significantly since COVID. Is that the same in Australia?
Yes.
So for the US, the average age of farmers continues to increase, while the total number of beginning farmers is decreasing, unfortunately. So the average age now, according to the last census of agriculture, is about 58. And every farmer under 35 years of age, there's about 5 farmers who have reached the quote-unquote retirement age, ad hoc retirement age of 65 and older. And as I mentioned, there's a challenge of securing the transfer of land. So, in fact, a number of my extension faculty at Texas A&M are focusing on this issue of land succession, farm succession in the state. It's a big issue. Yes.
Beginning farmers, can you just clarify on that? Is it new farmers that are coming into agriculture, or they're farmers that have gone away and study and then coming back in and taking over the family farm? Or
so the technical definition we're using is the one from the U.S. Department of Agriculture that says beginning farmers are those that have only been farming for less than 10 years.
Okay.
I don't know if that would include those who quit and then came back.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
But most of the beginning farmers that I'm going to be referring to are those that are really new to farming. Yeah. And within 10 years, within the 10 years. So I don't know in Australia, but many of our students, especially those who are from ag background, when I ask them the question of whether they want to come back and help their parents, their farm, don't want to go back to their farm. It's an unfortunate issue, right? So there's declining interest in farming among the younger generation. Part of that is the land access issue, the startup investments, the heavy physical demand with inadequate work-life balance, right? Let's face it, farming can be a lonely profession, especially if your farm is in a remote area. I know in Asia, I saw an article a couple of years ago, I don't know which country it's Korea maybe, or Japan, where they're recruiting brides, if you will. The farmers are recruiting brides for their farmers because they couldn't find brides in rural areas. Interestingly, female farmers account for about a third of the U.S. Farmers. And so they're significantly overrepresented as the principal operators as well among the beginning and limited resource farms. But farms with female principal operators tend to have lower survival rate, growth, and lower success rate as well compared to male counterparts, okay, according to these couple of articles here. Now, I don't know why. It's possibly part of that is the support that they're getting, right? But that's part of the motivation as well of the study, is to figure out whether there's differentiation in the market between male and female farmers. Okay. So our beginning farmer study, really the motivation is to figure out how we can revive farming interest and attract new entrepreneurs into agriculture, okay, given this aging issue of farmers and the issue of how can we attract more new farmers or beginning farmers into agriculture. Right? We test this using consumers' willingness to support beginning farmers. So Steve wants me to plug in the complementary role of experimental behavioral economics, right, and the whole economic relationship. So there you go. I've said it, Steve. And so we've conducted 3 types of tasks in this particular experiment. We've wanted to figure out whether consumers would value products that are produced by beginning farmers, and whether there's differentiation between products produced by male beginning farmers versus female beginning farmers. Right? Another task was this monetary support allocation. So we gave them a certain amount of money, and then they have to decide how much they're willing to, out of that money, they're willing to donate to the farmer. And then real effort task, which I'll explain in a few minutes. So we basically hypothesized 2 possible channels here to consider in our evaluation. One is perhaps if there is positive consumer support for beginning female farmers before they can achieve economies of scale. And the negative part is whether there are negative reservations about beginning and female farmers due to gender discrimination or perceived lack of experience. So there are programs now focused on beginning farmers and ranchers in the US. Okay. So from the previous question, a beginning farm, as I've mentioned, is one which any producer or principal producer has had no more than 10 years of experience in farming. That's from a USDA, US Department of Agriculture. Now, so beginning farmers tend to be younger, more likely to be female, and have lower farm income and experience than established farmers. And because of that, they face greater financial managerial risks. So there's issue of access to land, obviously, because of startup cost, whether they can obtain credit, right, and also equipment, right. Now, women-operated farms are about half the size of their male counterparts, and they tend to generate less farm income than their male counterparts. And so this intergenerational succession issue of farming tend to favor male successors. Okay. So this is another motivation why we wanted to also take a look at this gender differential issue. So some of the policies that support beginning farmers in the US would include transition incentive programs. This would include encouraging landowners to sell or lease their land under conservation reserve program to beginning and socially disadvantaged farmers, right? We have the land contract guarantee program to beginning farmers where their loans are secured or this land contract are secured by the government. And you have educational training programs as well to support especially female farmers. Okay. There's also a bunch of this credit assistance program, including low interest loans, right? Taking microloans. There are assistance rates as well. Do you do this or I do this?
No, I cannot manage the system at the moment.
So higher assistance rates for adoption of selected conservation measures. There's crop insurance benefits as well that include exemption from certain fees, administrative fees, include higher subsidies as well, and less stringent history requirements. And then there's this BFRDP program to support education, mentoring, and technical assistance initiatives focused on beginning farmers. So there's a bunch of these policy support programs, if you will, to encourage participation in the beginning farmer programs in the US. I noticed as well that Australia's got a lot of these beginning farmer programs. Okay, so this was what I saw yesterday, that there are loans out there available to beginning farmers to assist them, right, to plan and implement succession arrangements as well. And what is NAB? Is it National Australian Bank? So I saw as well that the NAB offers favorable loan assistance to beginning farmers in Australia.
Can I pass a comment that those are
Sure.
vastly underutilised?
Are they? Okay.
They are second mortgages on the basis of a first mortgage to a primary banker.
I see.
And apparently banks are in the business of making money out of lending money to other people. And as soon as the government intervenes in a micro incentivisation package like this one, banks don't like the government being involved in the banking system. So banks don't like those loans and they make it as hard as possible for people's bank system.
Thanks for telling us.
So there's probably 30 of those across the country. 30.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay. That's good to know, though. So what needs to be done to rectify that issue, do you think?
Milton Friedman's alive and well in government and alive and well in the banking system. Let's leave it at that. Very dry economic rationale for those sorts of things, and until the underpinning food security issues bubble up to the surface, there's a major problem. And the banking system, until the banking systems are incentivising as well, there's no incentive for the banks. Why would you lend at 12%, which is the average rate of interest that they're charging for a new farmer, when the government part of that's at 4% currently? It's 4.32%.
So they're making a profit out of it.
Yeah, they want to make money. And unless you've got a benevolent banker, they're very few and far between. They have shareholders, apparently.
Scott, did you have a comment, Scott, about that? I thought you had a comment. Any questions from Zoom? No? Okay.
Teams.
Teams? Is that Teams? Okay.
Can I just ask a question about the general picture about what's the problem, in the sense of farmers getting older, but you and so basically if we're all getting older and aging, etc. There's a new, but farmland prices are going up, so there's demand for farmland. So unless it's being bought and converted to non-farmland, it seems that there's demand for people to keep producing. And so if there is a shortage of demand from new entrant farmers, then presumably the price of farmland will eventually decline, because when people need to sell it because they're aging and the kids don't want to run the farm or whatever, the price of it will fall. I mean, I'm not a let's say fair free market economist, but you know, if the demand for the farmland isn't there, then presumably the price will fall, which will reduce one of the big barriers to new farmers coming in, which is the high costs of access. So I sort of wondered, is the problem manifest at the moment, or how is it likely to become a problem in the future if it's a case, if the farmland prices are still rising, which suggests that the demand to farm is still very strong, unless it's being converted. I know many things are going out, but there's still a lot of farmland in production. So I just wonder about the big picture, about what's the economic problem.
I think part of the issue is after COVID, or during COVID, people have been buying farmland not necessarily to use it as a farm. Hobby farming, if you will, or whatever, right? They just want space and so on, and that helped drive up farmland prices. Right? Now, obviously, there were buyers that were serious about farming, but I think many of those, at least in the U.S., many of the people who bought farms were actually just buying farms to get more space or do some part-time farming, not really serious farming. So maybe that's part of the issue. And then in developing countries, you know, it can be a food security issue, right? If nobody's going to be doing farming anymore. There's an issue as well of, are you going to let just big corporations control the ag industry, you know, especially in very less developed countries? So there's a number of these issues involved. Yes.
So I think that question, in some cases, like you have social problems occurring. So a lot of the problems in terms of farming, like in North America, and here when I first came, they were different because you have public social benefit issues in rural areas where you have fewer people, you have declining numbers, and that causes other complications with schools, churches, everything that you have to maintain. You can't maintain them. Whereas what I saw here in some parts is the farmers are actually not economically struggling. They are happy. They go on holidays, which many farmers on places like ours don't do. They stay local. So just to add to Dan's question, what are the real social issues? Why should the public be worried about this? Okay, if land prices are going, these farmers are getting richer. What is the real issue? And the other question is, you said some people are buying farms to just as investment or as hobbies. I think I know a few who have done that, professors in the US. That's true, but do they track the amount of land that is cultivated or the number of active farms? What's happening to that?
I think the Census of Agriculture questions related to that.
Yeah.
But I'm not so sure what the specific questions are.
Because that would be an important piece of information. We would worry less if the number of active farms is not going down, right? Even then, you could ask what Dan was asking.
Yeah.
Why should we worry if the market is doing its job? Okay. Farmers are seeing benefits from buying land and putting it aside, and the way commodity prices are, that works.
No, it's good for people. Good point. Yeah. That's what at the very beginning I said. This is not necessarily a problem in all places. Yes.
This kind of reasoning to me reflects a comparative statics thinking. The dynamics are important. That yes, after some time, the price of land will adjust downwards. In the meantime, things will have happened. And people who could buy land, or so, they're going to do something else. You know, not enough people who want to buy the land, no matter what the price is. And that is also a possibility. If you look at the, you know, the what's the transition between, let's say, two equilibrium. That's how you think about it. So that's another, you know, another point that goes more in your direction.
I'm going closer to whoever's making comments, so the Teams folks can hear it. Not that I want to be close to you. Any other questions?
There is one question here. It said, is the price difference in farmland real or nominal?
Oh, it's
From Manju.
both. I think both, at least in the US, right? Yeah, I don't know in Australia. I think it's gone up significantly too, right? Farmland prices?
Yes.
Both in nominal and real terms, right?
Real terms.
Real terms, yeah.
Absolutely.
I think so, yeah. At least for Australia and the US, you know. I think in many countries, actually, it's gone up.
Can I add to that, please?
Yes?
Because the inflation is different between the countries. When I saw that graph comparing between the countries, I was a bit curious how that compares. If it is nominal, how like that factor compares between the countries?
Which graph is it?
I think it's in the beginning, sorry. Poland and a few other countries, the difference between and after the pandemic. Yeah, this one.
This one?
The one. No, the one after this.
Oh, this one. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was your question? This is
because the inflation is different between the countries.
Yeah.
So what part of that is caused by that inflation, and
it's actually
what's the real?
I don't know if this is nominal or real. Yeah, I don't know the answer.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
My guess is probably nominal.
Nominal. Okay. Thank you.
So where was I? Okay, so in here, right?
You go to the one after this.
This one.
No, you did this and you did one out.
Okay, the Australia one. Okay, thank you for reminding me. So, so existing ag policies, however, may not favor all beginning farmers. Okay, for example, based on the criteria to qualify for some of the loans, this study found that only 14% of all beginning farmers had either a direct or guaranteed loan outstanding, and less than half of the beginning farms were likely eligible for these credit programs. Right? There's a gender component to this as well, that female farmers remain underrepresented as beneficiaries of these financial resources offered by the federal government. Right? So I think this is part of the motivation. I think it's important to understand how these market forces from the demand side would facilitate or hinder entry of beginning farmers and female farmers. So beginning farm operations probably need to differentiate their products to achieve higher sales in the market. But there's existing research there that indirectly elicited the importance of consumer support to these direct-to-consumer marketing channels. For example, beginning farmers who reported direct-to-consumer sales had a 7% higher survival rate compared to those who only reported traditional channels. So there's that importance of differentiating themselves. But accessing these direct-to-consumer channels also had a positive return on assets okay, and farm performance. Women farmers, however, have been found to earn significantly less farm income than those of their counterparts, male counterparts. So this could suggest that there's some gender inequity issues, right, in farming. There's robust evidence, obviously, in the economics literature on, labor markets. Women significantly are less likely to be interviewed, less likely to be hired in male-dominated or even gender-neutral occupations. We all know about the wage disparity gap, right, that exists between men and women in the labor market as well. Okay. So our research question is quite simple, as I've mentioned earlier. It's just we wanted to examine, at least on this pilot study, the public support for beginning farmers. To our knowledge, no incentivized experimental study as of date has been done on this issue. So I think this is important to design policies that can hopefully attract and help beginning and female farmers. So we conducted this pilot study to assess consumer support for beginning and female farmers using these 3 tasks that I mentioned earlier, right? It's a willingness to pay task using a Baker-DeGroot-Marshall elicitation procedure, monetary support allocation task, and real effort volunteerism task. So we use, as a context, we use this market maker program. It's a real program that exists in the United States. And this is what we gave our respondents. We said market maker is a network that helps farmers to connect with food retailers, grocery stores, processors, caterers, chefs, and consumers. Finding customers is probably the biggest challenge to beginning farmers. Your contribution to the market maker program will be used to assist beginning farmers in reaching more buyers and more efficiently forming profitable business alliances. This is like the quote-unquote nudge, if you will, information nudge that we provided our respondents, regardless of the treatment that they were randomly assigned to. Okay. The treatments, so we randomly assigned our subjects. So this is a 2-by-2 design, if you will, gender versus beginning or regular farming. Right, so we have 4 treatment groups, if you will, that varied according to gender of the farmer and the type of farmer, whether it's a beginning or regular farmer. So this is a pilot study. We have this number of respondents for each treatment, randomly assigned. Right. Now, for those of you not in experimental economics, the key really here is randomization, right? So the randomization ideally would even out the characteristics, both observable and unobservable, across the different groups, so we can then compare the outcomes across the groups properly and get a little more of a causal estimate because of that randomization. There you go, Steve. I plugged it in again. So we had 3 tasks, as I mentioned: product valuation task, monetary allocation task, and real effort task. These were randomly ordered. These tasks were randomly ordered across subjects to minimize potential order effects, if you will. And then at the end of the 3 tasks, we randomly picked the binding task. And what that really means is, if the binding task was the product valuation task, then that's really the basis for the exchange in money. So payment subjects unconditionally earned $2.50 for completing the study, plus up to an extra $2.50 extra earnings depending on the decisions they've made across those tasks. So the average earnings is $3.40. And then we had a post-experimental survey. So one question, if you're an experimental economist, that comes to mind is, so is this really a salient study, right, to the consumers, given that these are small stakes? Right? If this task was about in hundreds of dollars, would our findings be different? What do you think? Maybe, maybe not, right? Although there's a robust finding in the experimental economics literature that a lot of the tasks, a lot of the experiments done are quite robust to scaling up in terms of, but I want to warn you, the experiments are very much context dependent, right? And so I don't want to oversell the results of these findings because it could be different. It's a testable empirical question. So if we really want to know whether my results will hold, if the stakes are higher, significantly higher, then I should really do that experiment with more resources, obviously. Any questions about this?
That leads to the question of what was the sample size and how did you draw the sample of about 800?
So it was an online survey. Remember, I think it was Dynata that we used, a company, a marketing research company. And they have a representative panel of people in the United States, and that's what we use to randomly pick our sample.
I guess the number of responses you drew would reflect back on your base question, which is, that's a small amount of money. If it was a bigger amount of money, would it have drawn more people into the sample?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's always going to be sample selection issues, right, related to a number of these factors. But that's true in most studies, right? But the randomization, even though we have sample selection issues, the randomization should even out those sample selection issues. So the treatment effects should still be valid, assuming the randomization is done correctly. So the first task that we conducted was this product valuation task. And so we auctioned the product. This is a real product, no deception here, right? GR muscadine grape jelly from the real farmers, right? And so the subject's decision was very simple. What is their maximum amount of money that they're willing to pay for this 1 unit of this product? Okay. And they were exposed, obviously, depending on the treatment, whether it's a female beginning farmer or female regular traditional farmer or a male beginning farmer and so on, right? Remember those 4 treatment groups that I mentioned to you. So this is a Becker-DeGroot-Marchand procedure, a BDM. We made sure that we really inform them about the mechanism so they'll understand completely what the mechanism is all about. And so this is how the mechanism works. It's a very popular mechanism used in experimental economics and willingness to pay studies. If the bid is greater or equal to this randomly drawn market price from a bucket of prices, right? Then the subject would purchase the product, but pay the randomly drawn market price. Right? So we separate what the people would bid from what they actually pay. That makes it more incentive compatible. Okay. Now, if their bid is lower than the randomly drawn price for the subject, then they don't pay anything, they don't get the product. And then if they get the product, if this was the randomly drawn task for that particular subject, and if their bid was higher than the randomly drawn price, they get the product through the mail from us. Okay. And then the purchase price was deducted from the endowment that were given to them. So they actually have to pay, right, for the product that they got. Yes, Scott.
So muscadine grapes are not a widely known type of grape in the United States. It's a native grape that grows in the southern United States. I hadn't heard of them until I was in my 40s. How aware were consumers of this product?
Yeah, I think we had a question about that, and I think it was 65% awareness. So you're right, there was a significant percentage that were not aware of the product. But we described it, and so again, one question that probably should come to your mind is, would their bids would have been different if they were actually showed the actual product and they were able to taste it, right? So maybe not. Most likely it could have effect. But having said that, those effects should even out across the treatments again, right? Given the randomization. But surprisingly, Scott, even the non-trivial percentage of people not too familiar with the product, the average bid was still majority of the $2.50. which I'll show you in a few minutes.
15
15 minutes? Oh my goodness, okay. Can I have some exception? No. So that's the product. And so the monetary task, allocation task, we gave them $2.50 endowment. And so their decision is very easy. How much of that $2.50 they would actually give to support the beginning farmer using this market maker program that I showed you earlier, right? And so how much of that $2.50 they keep from themselves. If they're selfish and they don't want to support the beginning farmer, you should just give them zero, right? That's the monetary allocation. And donations were sent anonymously to the market maker, and the certificate was available to the subjects to see online. So they trust us that the money that they'll give to the market maker program to support beginning farmer actually is given to that market maker program. No deception. The real effort task, subject's decision here is just to figure out how much effort I should do using this effort task, which is just the summing 5 randomly chosen 2-digit numbers. Calculators were not allowed, maximum 5 minutes, and for a maximum of 10 problems. And they were allowed to quit at any time. And so for every summation task that they complete correctly, 25 cents will be donated to the market maker program for each problem correctly solved, right? And once again, donations were sent anonymously to the market maker program, and the certificate is visible, and the amount visible online that they can check. The certificate that was project donations to the market maker program that was shown to them as well online. Sample 59% male, 67% married, 70% identified as white. But the more important part is this last one here, which is there were no statistically significant differences or observable characteristics across the various treatments. So what that signifies that the randomization across the treatments worked, right? At least for observable characteristics. So these are the results for the product valuation tests. While subjects are willing to spend more than half of the endowment amount to the auction product, the differences in the bids or willingness to pay between beginning regular farmers are insignificant in both male and female treatments. So the bottom line is there are no statistically significant difference across the treatments, right? The 4 groups. That said, the amount of bid, right, is relatively high, right, for their endowment that they were given, which means that they're willing to support the farmers, but it didn't make a difference whether it's a beginning farmer or a regular farmer or whether the farmer is male or female, basically. And this was shown when we conducted our regression analysis as well, controlling for observable characteristics. For the monetary allocation task, when the objective there is to figure out, okay, how much am I going to give out of these $2.50? How much am I going to give to the beginning farmer? How much will I keep? These were the results as well. So they do not particularly support beginning or female farmers more or less than the regular and or male farmers in terms of direct monetary contributions as well. So no statistically significant differences in the treatment effects for this monetary allocation task. That said, they contributed as well. You can set positive amounts of contribution across the treatments. Same in our regression analysis, the conditional analysis shows up no statistical significance. For the real effort task, we were able to find some differences, right? 80% of the subjects are willing to make volunteering efforts to farmers with an average of $1.50 donation generated per subject. They conduct more effort, basically. And so the amount of voluntary effort support, what we found is higher, significantly higher for both male and female beginning farmers relative to the regular farmer counterparts. So in this particular task, we found some differences for support for beginning farmers, basically. for this particular task. But as you can tell, out of those 3 tasks, this is the only task that really showed some significant differences or sign of support for beginning farmers, although no significant difference in the support across gender. So in summary, we identified, I think, relatively good support for farmers, irrespective of farmer type, irrespective of experience or gender. No significant differences across treatments in terms of the product valuation task and the monetary allocation task. But we did observe some higher effort towards beginning farmers relative to their regular farmer counterparts, but no differences across gender. Am I right on time?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we have time for questions?
Yes, so we still have time with it for questions and answers. Yep, Steve.
Thanks, Rudy. That last difference with the hyperthyroidism, the fact that the results are different from the first two makes me think, as a suggestion, that if instead of them having an endowment, then generates the other people's money effect, if they had earned their money through some task, you might have actually
Good point.
observed differences just like the third one.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. But once again, we did this equally across the treatments. So, and we found some significance of it. So, but you're right. You know, if the money was earned, so the issue here is the money. What Steve is really alluding to is the house money effect. That they're using not their own money, they're using house money. So that could elicit some biases, if you will. But once again, even if that house money effect is present, hopefully the randomization will even out those effects as well across the 4 groups, making this still valid.
But that, I was thinking differences between the treatments, not within the four scenarios, not within the group, right? But you might see differences like you did in the third.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it'd be good to test that. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael, please.
The first one, the grape jelly one, are they revealing a preference to support the farmers or simply a preference for the grape jelly? Are they just buying a product that's differently labeled?
Good point. But remember our manipulation, right? So we told them whether it's a beginning farmer or a regular farmer or a male farmer and a female farmer, those 4 groups.
None of those are different. So am I just saying I'm willing to buy? I know in the shops it costs $2.50. I'll put in a bit of $1.
Yeah. No, that's it. Yeah.
No.
So everything else is the same except their exposure to whether the product came from a male or female farmer or beginning or traditional farmer. And we didn't find significant differences across those groups. So maybe they were just bidding it because of their preference for the product and not necessarily because it's coming from a beginning farmer. So.
Yes, please.
The differentiated products path to market comes at a cost of the stock keeping unit running down a separate path. Was that factored into the analysis that a differentiated product has a cost associated with its own differentiation, and it's probably going to be more expensive to get it to the consumer?
We use the same product, exactly the same product across those 4 groups, those 4 treatments. So I don't think it should matter, right? I don't know how else I should answer your question.
How does the consumer know that this product is coming from, I guess my question embedded in there is that you're trying to differentiate it so that it's either come from a new farmer or a female farmer.
Yeah, right.
How does the consumer know? And I can see it's a choice experiment, but if we went to it to real world, it's going to sit.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's going to sit on a Walmart shelf.
Yeah.
And
so
Walmart's going to take its
So the implication there is if there were significant differences in the results that we found, then one possibility is to label the products accordingly. So we'll build a product labeling.
Please.
Because they gotta know, right, whether it's coming from a female beginning farmer or not. And so the question there is whether that should be a voluntary label or it should be mandated or whatever. Right? That's a different question. It would be the labeling and marketing issues.
Yeah, please.
I was going to ask about the counterfactual in this experiment too, just about when it comes to land succession. The story you keep hearing is that, you know, the experienced farmers are retiring and the land is getting bought out by giant companies and not young farmers. So I think, you know, you're comparing young to experienced, but I wonder if it would be much different if you compared, say, young farmer to large corporate farm, and maybe that would kind of like lead to a much different.
No, I like that comment.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That would be good. Another
study. Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I was about to ask almost the same question. You said that when they were making choices, were they given the information of where the product was coming from? Let's say male standard, whatever. Together with the other possibilities, were they comparing or not comparing? In other words, they knew there was these 4 possibilities and the product was coming from.
No, they were not informed about the other 2.
Because then that's that. Okay.
They were not informed. Yeah.
Okay.
So totally aside, they were just exposed to one thing.
Then there's probably, as Curtis was saying, it could be that the counterfactual was actually activating people's minds, but not everybody had the same counterfactual. And so whatever people compare that to could have affected the. So sometimes it's actually better to control for that, so that people don't wander around
having a reference point.
Yeah, have their own counterfactuals.
Yeah. So experiments are context dependent, and if you and one of my methodological studies found is that reference points matter, right? Giving them a reference point or not can matter.
Yeah.
Another study.
Also, studies as well.
Another study that I really want to know is test what would motivate people to support more beginning farmers. Right?
Yeah, so we have one question online from Claire. How does the support from farmers in compared to other study? So compare your study results with others. How much people willingness to pay? Is it comparable with others?
Unfortunately, there are not many studies we can compare it to.
Yeah.
As I've said, I think this is one of the first incentivized studies on the beginning farmer issue.
Yes, Scott,
so a related question. There have been a number of studies about consumer willingness to pay for traits in production that are not observable in consumption. And most of those have found no willingness to pay unless consumers believe that there was a health benefit that is a private benefit. In other words, the choice, a lot of the evidence on willingness to pay for organic foods is that people believe it's going to be healthier for them and their children, not that they're expressing a willingness to pay for something that was good for the environment in the place that the product is being produced. So my question, Rudy, is, are there studies that show consumer willingness to pay for the kind of person who produced something?
When the kind of person like
my point being, you know, things that, again, to me, this is a trait that is something that it doesn't benefit me directly in consumption.
Yes.
So I have to care about that person's. We don't see that with environmental traits in production. So I'm wondering if there is evidence of this in demographic traits like what you're looking at here.
I agree with you, Scott, on the organic part. But what we found in many of our studies is ones that provided them information about how the product, for example, could benefit the environment, can make a difference in their valuation. So information nudges can make a difference depending on how you frame that information, right? So it's not necessarily true that most consumers won't value the environmental attribute part of novel products. you can nudge them basically to value it more if you give them some information about the benefits of the good for the environment. So that part, I think there's quite a bit of studies that says that environmental information nudges can increase people's valuation for environmental goods. Another thing I want to mention related to Scott's question is that there's a number of studies as well that found significant effects across racial groups. So we have one study very much related to this, where we varied basically the race of the farmer. So we showed them same face of the farmer, we just varied the skin tone, basically. One white, one Hispanic, and one black. And we found significant differences in those. So that's a kind of, is that related to your question?
Oh, that's exactly.
So for racial thing, yeah, it's fascinating, but it's sad too, right?
I interpret Scott's question in terms of valuation.
Sorry, Steve. So it seems that we need 1 more hours to discuss all the questions we have in the room and also online. But I must say this is a close for the session today. Yet everything's on time because it's 12 now.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Rudy, for being here, and we hope that you will come here more often in the future because you can see a lot of interest from the audience.
Right. Thank you very much, everyone.